If you'd asked me about a week ago, I would have said, oh yeah, Mega Man 9 and 10 are great, I love them, they're incredible, and they're awesome, and they're amazing. And I would have been wrong, because as we all know, Mega Man 9 sucked. It didn't suck that badly, it was still definitely a net positive game, and still did a lot right, but it felt like an NT Creates game in a bad way. So, I was pretty nervous walking into Mega Man 10. It's like, oh god, am I just an idiot? Am I stupid? Am I a moron? Am I dumb? Am I terrible? Now, granted, I ask those questions every day, all the time, but the point is that I was really worried about my opinion on this one. And while it does a couple of things wrong, and it does, this is the game I remembered. This is the game that was in my mind when I thought of the new ones, the ones right before the drought. This was immediately before the drought really hit. I've talked about the drought several times. We lost Mega Man Legends 3. We lost Mega Man ZX 3. They pulled the plug on so many other projects like the Powered Up series and the Maverick Hunter X series. And just Mega Man was shut down for several years until the Legacy Collection came out, which itself hinted at the return to form with Mega Man 11. The drought didn't just affect Mega Man, admittedly. Some of you are probably familiar with this, because I've already given my firm theory as to why Mega Man shut down. I'm not going to repeat it for like the third time here. But this was also when Capcom was kind of going in terms of a lot of things after their major restructuring. The same thing that led to the creation of games like Mega Man X7 and the destruction of games like Mega Man X8. Anybody who's a fan of Dead Rising is familiar with this particular period of time, as well as Resident Evil and a couple of other franchises as well. We're not doing super hot. Now, that being said, anybody who's a fan of Capcom also knows that there's been a very strong return to form recently. We've had Monster Hunter World. We've had the Resident Evil 2 remake, which was actually really good. I liked it. I'm not a Resident Evil fan. I love that one. Arguably, Resident Evil 7 kind of kicked it off. I forget what we had. Devil May Cry 5, which kind of was a return to form in several ways. And of course, we had Mega Man 11, which we'll talk about next time. But I mentioned that because there was this pretty decent gap of just in the middle of that. And I've thought maybe this time, as I'm researching the behind the scenes of Mega Man 10, maybe I'll be able to finally say why it is all this nonsense happened. And the answer is, I have no idea. Oh, I've given you my theory. The theory of, to state this in more clear terms, because some people still don't quite get this. So I am going to state this for, I think, the fourth or fifth time at this point. When it comes to television shows, movies, and games, and also other projects, any company, really, the managers in charge, the people who are executives or on the managerial tier or on the track, they all are kind of jockeying both for position and political power, but let's be honest, for resources. This goes back to that weight thing I talk about extensively. And so each of these producers wants their project to get that weight. They want that priority. They want those resources. They want it to be devoted towards them. When Inafune left, / was kicked out, / whatever actually happened with regards to Capcom, nobody was going to bat for Mega Man anymore. So Mega Man getting shut down makes perfect sense because nobody was trying to argue that it should get resources and time and effort anymore. This is the exact same thing that happens to an enormous amount of television studios and, let's be honest, just everyday offices. I mean, I'm sure at least some of you who have worked in a corporate office before has seen this happen before, where one manager is like, well, we should push for this thing, and another manager's like, well, we should push for this thing, and one of them wins, and that's the one that gets the resources. Or when one of them stops fighting for a particular project, that project is abandoned. This is just how this works. That's why I call it office politics. So, we did get one last game before it, which is this one, which, ironically, I have very little behind-the-scenes information for you. I wish I could tell you about the creation of this and why this game is so much better than 9. Unfortunately, I can't tell you anything. I have not found anyone. No interviews, no behind-the-scenes, no the makings of. That's not quite true. I've seen an interview by Inafune who said some people thought Mega Man 9 was hard, so we had it in easy mode. And I remember when Mega Man 10 came out and half the internet decided to explode in a vitriolic rage over the inclusion of an easy mode because the internet is stupid. Nevertheless, that's all I've got when it comes to behind-the-scenes perspective. I don't have anything else to add. I do apologize. Let's talk about the narrative here. Unfortunately, I think the narrative isn't as interesting as Mega Man 9's. The whole expiration date thing is still one of the most fascinatingly horrible things I've ever seen in this franchise. But it's much better presented. I like the visuals and the backstory are better done in terms of the presentation there. We're back to good dude idealization as opposed to the oddly empty and weird dry bones stage design that we had in Mega Man 2. And we actually have some really surprisingly well done cutscenes, which tell the story in a fairly effective way. So that's cool. Unfortunately, I don't have much else to add to that, except for one little thing. For many years, several of us have tried to theorize on where the Maverick virus came from, and one of the earliest theories was the obvious one. It came from the evil energy from Evil Robot, aka Trio, back in Mega Man 8. I've never really bought that. I felt like there was nothing really to indicate or lead itself in that direction other than the fact that it's bad. Everything about the evil energy, about the nature of it spreading by pulling evil thoughts out of people and all that, just never really kind of worked with me. And its vague usage as a power source was something that was never really described in the game proper, and neither of those things really tend to line up with the Maverick virus, in my opinion. A much stronger theory came about when this game came out, because this gives us Robo-Enza, which I'm going to call Robenza from now on because it sounds better. Robenza is this virus which infects robots and makes them kind of go violent and kind of go crazy in sort of a vague, sort of an irregular kind of a way, if you will. And Dr. Wiley decides to use this as a way to say, hey, I've got the cure. I've worked with Dr. Light and Rock and Roll and Otto to figure out a cure. I'll give it to you if you work for me. Which is an interesting approach and probably one of the better overall plans Dr. Wiley's ever had. But the reason I bring that up is because Dr. Wiley did not infect the world to cause chaos or to control the robots, because he had no control over those robots. He was trying to dangle this cure as the means of control. Now, if you don't understand the significance of that, it's twofold. Number one, it reiterates and firmly codifies the idea that Dr. Wiley is not evil. He is not Dr. Vile. He is not mwahaha, I'm a blah, blah, blah. I mean, he even leaves the cure for the frickin' Robenza as a thank you for them saving his life. So, okay. Now, to be clear, and I always have to say this, I'm not saying Dr. Wiley is good. The Baron is not good back in Witcher 3, but to call him evil, to call him that kind of malevolence or maliciousness is not something I would consider acceptable. Instead, what we have is someone who is, well, his own particular character, a bit more of a gradient thing. But I bring this up because the games have hinted at this several times, and the creators have said outright that Dr. Wiley is an evil many times. This is probably one of the few times where actually in the game they flat out state that he's not evil, which is funny because they did the total opposite in Mega Man 8. See the aforementioned evil energy. Anyways, that's the first reason. The second reason is, if this is the precursor of the Maverick virus, or if this is the Maverick virus, just straight up is the original thing, and we get out the cure and then it mutates in the wild and becomes the Maverick virus, then that means Dr. Wiley never intended for the Maverick virus to be what it is. So one of the arguments, one of the impressions that some people tend to think, because this is the realm of theory crafting, because we don't know, because they haven't codified this stuff, was that Dr. Wiley wanted the Maverick virus to spread throughout the world and cause chaos and death and mass destruction. Now, I've never believed that personally, but this is probably the strongest piece of evidence for why I don't believe that personally. After all, if Dr. Wiley always intended to use this as a means of control, not destruction or chaos, then that means the Maverick virus going wildly out of control would be something that he wouldn't want or even desire. It's just something that kind of happened as a result of negligence, which, if you remember back in X4, I think, when we discussed the various possible origins of what the Maverick virus is, this kind of lines up with the negligence idea that it was just the junk data from Zero. I'm just pointing that out. It's just occurred to me just now. Anyways, either way, it is an interesting little character tidbit. But let's talk about the gameplay, because that's where this really shines. I really feel like they looked at Mega Man 9 and said, okay, well, I don't like that, and that. And so they changed it. Most of the changes from 9 to 10 are small and subtle, but nevertheless completely change how the game is played. First of all, we have the shop is back. Okay, so that's cool. The prices have been changed and the drop rate of the bolts has been changed. What this means is there is a regular flow of items through the shop. You also get access to the shop every time you game over or leave a stage. Why is that relevant? Well, this also fixes one of my biggest problems with Mega Man 9. In Mega Man 9, if you wanted to go refill in the middle of a Wiley stages, sucks to be you. In this one, if you want to go refill in the middle of the Wiley stages, you can. You just access the shop after finishing a particular Wiley stage, and then you continue. You can go back to the stage select, which does reset your progress, but this is a substantially different matter than being locked in and screw you. So that's nice. Immediately gets rid of 2 negatives right off the bat right there. But more to the point, there's a lot smarter usage of which enemies should be where in regards to terrain. There's a lot smarter usage of gimmicks within the stages. This is something that they've kind of always tried to push a little bit, and they did a little bit of in 9, and they do a lot more of in 10. You know, Sheep Man stage is probably one of my personal favorites. We've got the conveyor belts, which can charge things, which then allow you to interact with either like a platform, which has a clear visible indicator of when it's going to fall, and it flashes before it falls. So you have nice visual indicators of when that's going to happen. We've also got that to charge the boss. So you can pop up and shoot the boss. So you only have the boss always on for some strange reason. We've also got the platforms that fade and wonderful tutorialization and escalation. This is what Mega Man 10 does substantially better than Mega Man 9. This is going back to something I've talked about several times within this series. You introduce a concept of a theme. You know, in this case, the fading platforms is the theme. So you've got a platform, you touch it in any way, and it shimmers for a minute, nice big audible sound, and then it's gone, right? And so we introduced that theme, and that is our theme now. And then we escalate it, and we make it so that you can't quite get to some optional stuff. And then we escalate it further, and we start to add some kill spikes. We start to add far more complex patterns, like you've got red going here and here and here and here. And so if you touch this red, this whole screen of red goes away. So you have to think that out, or maybe you want to dodge the red and just land on the yellow in order to try and just get rid of that one, and so forth and so on. It's proper introduction, establishment, escalation when it comes to stage design themes. And it does this throughout pretty much the entire work. There are very few stages in Mega Man 10 that do not do this and do this very well. The other stage I would be remiss if I didn't mention is Nitro Man stage, sorry. Strike Man stage is fun, but Nitro Man stage is the really cool one. Because obviously we've got the car kind of motif and all that, but no, the really awesome one is the highway. You've got this highway section, and what happens is there's a truck that goes and smashes into you, and coincidentally, it's like a truck. What's really awesome about this section, other than the fact that it's a visually fun little way to do it, and they play with it. So we have the introduction, yeah. So we've got the one coming right at you. We've got establishment. We've got this, and we're trying to dodge over them, and there's some that smash into each other. And then we've got escalation, where you have to actually jump on top of these things in order to be able to progress. Oh, and there's spikes in the way now, so they're trying to fling you into the spikes. You have to be more careful about your positioning. But that's just good. What really pushes that into great, which the reason we gave this a positive and a half, is because of the fact that there's multiple ways around this. If you have Chill Man's weapon, you can just throw it on the ground and they can run into it and explode. If you have Chill Man's weapon, you can throw it onto them and they freeze and you can use it as a platform. If you have Blade Man's weapon, you can hit the lights up above, which stops them. If you have a regular cannon or regular damage of any kind, you can shoot them. I don't remember if it takes a lot of time, forgive me, but you can shoot them and destroy them while they're on attack, and so forth and so on. I don't know why I said it, so forth and so on. The reason I say so forth and so on is because that's the game design of the game as a whole. Multiple options, multiple methods through multiple weapons in order to be able to progress. And this is what this game does in spades. It's very well designed, very clear, very obvious thought was put into each stage, which is even more impressive when you consider easy mode and hard mode. This is some of the best difficulty design I've seen in video gaming. I'm not actually joking about that. This enters the annals of like Diablo 3 or is it annals? Of Diablo 3, of Dishonored 2, which is something I've always praised. The Last of Us 2 had really excellent difficulty design. This could be better. It usually could be better, but this is still fantastic. The way this works is they design the stage, and here's your stage and here's your normal difficulty. Okay, cool. That's what we played through the whole game on. But then we played a couple stages on easy mode, and the enemies attack differently. Like some of the attacks, rather than hitting in 4 directions, they just hit in 2. Or some of the enemies don't attack as often. Or there's a different enemy placement. Like they completely change which enemies are here to kind of change up the theme of certain rooms. Or they make it so that, so we're on easy mode right now, so they make it so that some of the spikes aren't present. Or they put platforms over some, not all, of the bottomless pits or over the spikes. Actual thought and effort done to change up the enemy attacks, the enemy placement, and the level design to change it to easy mode. Oh, and, before I forget, when you get to the actual bosses, the bosses have a different attack pattern. Their little AI is different, but also the attacks they use is different on easy mode, which of course leads me very smoothly into hard mode. On hard mode, the bosses gain a completely new attack that you don't see otherwise, which is awesome, by the way, and it's usually a big, doomy attack. And I don't even mean like a desperation move like we've seen in some of the X series. No, I mean they just gain this additional attack, which is much harder to dodge, and that's just part of their normal rotation. And there's more enemies. The enemy attacks are different. And there's either more pits or more spikes or just variants of the level design. Same exact thing as easy mode, but flipped. Excellent level design, excellent enemy placement, excellent boss design. This is awesome. This is very good difficulty design. But wait, there's actually more. Because you can play as rock, blues, or bass. Or bass, if you prefer. All three of them change how you play semi-substantially. Proto, of course, is still the hard mode option. The hard man option. You get to play Mega Man 3 as hard man. That would be boring, wouldn't it? You just shoot your arms and then you go through the whole stage. No, Proto Man remains the hard mode option because even though he has the charge and the slide, he doesn't have certain other things. He still has the knockback and he still has the additional damage and all that fun stuff. And bass, or bass, is the easy man option. He has straight up flight. He starts with that, with his treble jetpack. And it is a full-on flight. It's like the Rush Jet all the way back in Mega Man 3, the one that was broken. And you can just switch back in and out of that because thanks to the fact that the L and R buttons are back, I don't know why they were missing a 9, you can actually switch between things in mid-action, in mid-flight, which is actually more useful than it sounds. It's such a minor change. But it means that you don't have to hit the pause button to cancel rush, for example, or to cancel out of a thing. You just hit L or R and then you're right out of it. This can also cancel shots, which is kind of a bad thing, but can also be a good thing depending on the perspective. So, Bass also can shoot in, I think, 7 directions total. He can shoot everywhere except for straight down, I think, something like that. And he machine guns, so you can just hold down the button. And he's also got a slide, which is a dash, and he takes less damage, I think. So he's the easy mode option. But the really awesome thing is the fact that you can mix and match. If you want to play on hard mode with Bass, you can. If you play easy mode with Proto, you can, and you can do any other combination or any other variation you want to, and that's awesome. That is wonderful difficulty design, wonderful level design, wonderful enemy design, wonderful boss design. Pluses, just pluses everywhere. Let's talk about the weapons, because the weapons are legit in this one. I actually have a picture on my phone here of the bosses, so I don't forget any this time. So let's start with Blade Man. He's probably the most boring option, but once again, he gives you the standard spread fire, which is something a lot of these games have given all the way back to, I guess technically 2, if you want to get down to it with the Metal Blade, because it shoots a shot in front of you, a shot kind of up, and then a shot straight up, like that, straight 45. Funk. Unless you're jumping, in which case you shoot straight, and then down, and then down. It's a surprisingly useful weapon and is useful in just about every single screen in the entire game. So that's nice. Then we move on to Solar Man. He's a little bit of a different one because you shoot out a shot, but then it either sits there for a moment and then does a horizontal splash like that and just hits the entire screen on that line. So it's a like that. Or you can actually hit the enemy directly with it, of course, if you just want to do tons of damage into their face. There's nothing wrong with that. Then we have Sheep Man. The hardest to use, but arguably most useful weapon. You'll get very few shots of it. And you shoot at this little cloud, and the cloud does very little damage. But if the cloud gets up there, it does a lightning shot straight down. This lightning shot stays here for a few seconds and does damage as long as it's there. You aim this sucker correctly, and it will absolutely murder whatever's in its path. The catch is, of course, aiming it. I know this thing is useful, ignoring the fact that I myself used it several times to good effect, because I've seen speedruns of this game. Then we have Chill Man's weapon, a surprisingly and deceptively useful weapon. So first of all, it's this little shot that just kind of goes out in front of you, and then it creates some spikes. Okay, cool. There's been a lot of ground weapons in the franchise for a while at this point. Ever since Mega Man 3, I think, started that with the Snake Man, Search Snakes. But this ground weapon is useful for 3 big reasons. First of all, the usual reason. You can attack something below you. Second of all, it is a freeze thing. So if you hit someone with the actual arc, it'll freeze them. And you can either use them as a platform or just kind of bypass them or whatever. The third reason is those spikes. Those spikes are perfect for taking out certain types of enemies or effectively putting a little bit of a barrier. Like you're moving forward, put the spikes behind you, you keep going. The enemy who's trying to approach you from behind just right into the spikes, and that's the end of them. Then we move on to Nitro Man's weapon. Nitro Man's weapon seems kind of boring because it's just kind of this little metal blade light. It just kind of bounces out and does damage. And that's terrible unless you hold it out. If you hold the weapon button with the Nitro Man thing, and you hold it up against a wall, it grabs you and pulls you up that wall. This is awesome. Very useful on multiple stages and wonderful utility and pretty much mandatory for the speedrun. Then we have Strike Man. This is the ball. This is your bounce attack. It's Gemini Laser all over again, except it's faster and you can have 2 in the air at the same time. Again, surprisingly useful because it does good damage on just about everything, and you can have 2 out at once. And it's a bouncing weapon, so it's the same thing as always. Pump Man. I know I've talked before about how, the shields of this series, and I stand by my statement that Junkman's shield is probably the best shield we've seen, but Pump Man is right behind it. Pump Man, once again, summons multiple orbs. You've got all these orbs surrounding you, and each one can take a shot, and if it does, it goes away. And each one can do damage, and if it does, it goes away. And so you could have only 2 orbs, or 3 or 8 or whatever, rotating around you, depending. Whenever you hit the fire button again, after having it out, it shoots whatever's left out in a pattern. So very similar to Junkman's, but with slightly more obvious shots, as opposed to Junkman's kind of vague thing. It's pretty similar. The differences are very minute, but it's still a good shield, and therefore one of the best shields, which leads us, of course, to Commando Man. Commando Man is, once again, going back to the concept we had back in Mega Man 3 and Mega Man 5. You shoot, and then you can hit up or down, and the shot goes up or down. The catch with Commando Man's weapon is the actual missile itself kinda sucks. It doesn't do that much damage, which sounds a lot like the thunder sheep, whatever it's called. And it's a similar concept. In this case, what you want to do is you want to have that missile hit an object or a platform or a bit of the terrain. What it does, it makes these giant shockwaves come out in both directions. So, like that. And those shockwaves do way more damage, and damage per frame, depending on the enemy. That's where that one's useful, and again, it rewards you for using it properly. And that's actually everyone. We're back up to Sheepman's thing. So, that is the weapons in Mega Man 10. Really good variety, really good utility. Some of the better classic Mega Man weapons, I'd see. We'll see if Mega Man 11 surpasses that tomorrow. We'll be playing Mega Man 11 tomorrow, by the way. You all voted that I should take a break. Naturally, I'm going to try and get some groceries, because I haven't had time to get groceries in over 3 weeks at this point. Anyways, not complaining. Just stating fact. This is such a good game. And then we get to the Wiley stages. And here's where the game... No, I'm actually joking. Wiley 1 is one of my favorite Skull Castle stages ever. And I can't describe why by saying it's got this cool thing where there's a giant dragon that follows you. It's just incredibly well designed. As you're going through Wiley 1, what they do, it's the final exam. It's exactly what a Wiley stage should be. It is the final exam for all the concepts, the mechanics, and the enemies that you've been encountering so far. Do you know how to play this game? Check. And it's a skill check, is what it is. We've got gear checks, we've got health checks, we've got groupie checks, which are really irritating. This is a skill check, making sure that you have some kind of experience and mastery over the game that you just beat the 8 stages of. It's really well designed, and it even does the Doc robots correctly. I love the weapons archive, because unlike Doc Robot, thought and work and design was obviously put into how they function and adapting them, adapting the old robots to this game. Changing up their pattern slightly, but enough that if we know their pattern, we know what we're getting into. And changing up how, like the collision boxes or the nature of the arcs of the weapons and stuff like that was all designed for this game as it should be, rather than just kind of crudely dumping it in like they did with Mega Man 3. So, extremely well designed. Probably the best boss fight in the entire series. I think they could do an entire game centered entirely around the weapon archive concept, but that's neither here nor there. Either way, then we move on. We go on to Wiley 2, which is okay, and then Wiley 3, which is okay. But I gotta take special mention about this, because as we were playing through Mega Man 10, it's kind of a running gag that Inti Creates is absolutely in love with spikes. I know I've pointed this out before. But it's sort of become a running meme that there's this one designer, we're gonna call him Bob, and Bob is just... His wife left him for a spike, and he's been trying to recover from it, and it's just been this horrible traumatic event. And the rest of Inti Creates is like, okay, Bob, you can keep designing levels with way too many spikes. And Bob's like, okay. But when it came to Mega Man 10, Bob was kind of going through rehab. He was just, Spikes Anonymous. He was, hi, my name's Bob, and I like to put spikes all over the place. Hi, Bob. And there's like Lava Joe over there, and there's Bottomless Pit Jerry, and you get the idea. And Bob was going through rehab, and so he was trying to hold himself back. But unfortunately, he had a relapse, because one of the Wiley stages is literally just spikes. I'm not exaggerating. I'm not kidding. The whole stage is spikes. Just instant death spikes. Although, in the interest of fairness, even this stage was better designed than it could have been. Actual thought and effort and care was put into the positioning of the spikes as area denial is what it really is, as opposed to do this perfectly or die. So that was nice. Anyways, then we move on, and we get to probably one of the best Wiley machine fights ever, in my opinion. the giant pirate ship. I know you're thinking, but it's so dorky. Oh, it's so dorky looking. And it doesn't actually look dorky, in my opinion. And I mean that. Dorky would be that stupid dinosaur in 9, or maybe like the giant weird mech tank thing in 5, which is just, no thank you. But this thing, it looks appropriately amusing. It's rather thematically appropriate. And its attacks, so it kind of hovers up and down. It's got missiles, and it's got homing missiles. Nice big missiles, which hit like a truck if they hit you, but you're supposed to jump on them. And homing missiles, which are the area denial, or you shoot them in order to get rid of them. And that, it's simple, but it allows you a lot of flow. Most of that fight is completely in your control, as opposed to any level of RNG or irritation or frustration. And then you get to the second phase, where he's got this freezing thing, and he's got these other shots. And it's fun. It's fun. Then we get to something which is so stupid. I didn't give it a positive because it's such a little thing, but it gets a smile out of me every time because it's just a little gag. You know, it's like, and then we just go up and up and up and up and up and up and up all the way into space, because apparently Wiley invented the Jacob elevator a little bit in advance. And we fight in the upside down stage of his orbital space station attached to the Earth. Where did he get the funds to build this? And, oh right, he had that Kickstarter campaign back in 9. That explains everything. You think I'm joking, look it up. And so we fight that stage, and that stage is just a refill stage, but I actually legitimately like the final capsule fight. It's 2 capsules, they have multiple attacks, which usually dovetail into each other, so like he'll attack, and these shots will go over to the other one, or he'll shoot this out, and then it'll zoom in like this, and just so fun. That's why they kind of tennis the attacks back and forth between them, and that helps to change the flow of the fight, and makes it more interesting, because you can always kind of feel the patterns as you're going through it, even if you've never fought the fight before. And of course, the fight would be really frustrating to maneuver through and dodge, but they realized, you know what we could do to make a Wiley capsule fight more interesting? Because they always just kind of blink in and out all over the place, right? Let's make it so that we're fighting in low gravity. And all of a sudden, I keep talking on these ruminations, I keep talking about the painted area, which is the amount of area you have access to. All of a sudden, you have access to the whole screen. You can just jump anywhere because of the low gravity. And we have a nice backdrop of the Earth upside down, of course, because it's like up there. God, that's going to be disorienting as hell. And then, whoa, no, Wiley's gone. But it's okay. He's just super sick. I never noticed this before, by the way. This is my final little note here. I never noticed before. When he's giving his big speech about work for me or the end, he's already kind of sick. He coughs, sniffle. And when you fight him in the Wiley capsule fight, periodically he will actually sneeze inside his capsule. I never noticed that before. Either way, if it's not obvious, I really liked this game. As ever, I'm curious of your thoughts and comments. But you're probably wondering, Laura, hold on. Yeah. Favorite song, right? Well, what's funny is my favorite Mega Man 10 song is actually on the official soundtrack, which isn't in the game. But I still like the actual version. It's Against the Pressure. It's the Wiley 2 song. And Wiley 2 and Wiley 1, I forget what Wiley 1's song is, are both really good songs. There's also Nitro Man, which is amazing, and Strike Man, and Solar Man. Mega Man 10 is kind of filled with bangers, so there's a lot of really good music in this one. As always, curious of yours. Hope you've enjoyed, because tomorrow we finish up the Mega Man block, and we're going to be done with Mega Man for probably a very long time at this point, because we're going to go ahead and move forward to Mega Man 11, after the drought, when Capcom had found themselves. Little nervous about that one. I'll see you next time. I should do a shark thing.